Hi, welcome back to part four of the Tony Drayton interview, or Odyssey, as it is perhaps developing into. Um, okay, so for the benefit of people for whom this is the first one, we have been through your life um, as a punk rocker, as a squatter in London, doing a fanzine, Ripped and Torn, doing another fanzine, Killy Pet Puppy. Then Stonehenge Festival comes along, changes everything because you discover circus performing stroke clownism. I suppose clownism is a word, is it? Maybe it is now. But you've gone off now and you've decided to take circus performing seriously, whereas most of the people around you are just adding it as a sort of a hobby or whatever. And you're with your partner Pravat, and you've gone to Belgium for a European juggling convention, and now you're about to head off into the unknown. And one thing I'd like to sort of start with, actually, thinking about all that, you seem to your story seems to suggest a very kind of laissez-faire. That's not, possibly not the right word. It suggests that you were really willing to sort of go where the music took you, metaphorically speaking. Were you quite carefree about this stuff?
I was, yeah, negligently so. In the sense, I could have been right. I could have stuck the people who've given the right arm for to work for the enemy, and realised that was a career. There's a career in writing for there. So when I had my foot in the door, I could have gone down that route. I could have been loaded, the both metaphorically and being the editor of Loaded, because that's the kind of era at that point.
Mm.
And that came out of the NME. And I just see it was laissez-faire, as you say about it, negligent, as I say. But also, you could say I was caring. I was too caring because I felt the music, but I didn't feel it was honest. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel purity that had sparked me off and made me leave Glasgow, leave Cumbernauld in the first place. It was a real feeling. Then was the feeling of this is right, and it didn't feel right at that point. Didn't fit the music. I said to you, the music I felt was becoming too manufactured. All the subcultures, the billies, were being infiltrated by fake bands, and it wasn't what I'd signed up for. I didn't join the punk army for this.
Did you then take those kind of did you take the same attitude into the whole traveling circus performing world?
I did. And what I did take, my experience was for being the editor of a magazine, be able to edit, publish, uh, produce, if you like, and sell and distribute a magazine. I'm going to talk about here is logistics. And that seemed to be something that I liked doing. I could do, and even things like that was kind of coming to stuff like Black Sheep. Even though I didn't want to be in Black Sheep, I didn't agree with Black Sheep at the time. I liked West Hampstead Housing Co-op where we were, but then I jumped ship and I realised it is good. So when people like Mike Quealy and my sister Val helped set it up, and I realised this actually is a good idea. And when I did jump ship to Black Sheep, I then quickly I liked the logistics of it. I liked the idea of organising this stuff. We again had Centro Iberico, and I seemed to be very good at being to take that disaster from Andy Martin, and it's probably my Centro Iberico interview, take the disaster that Andy Martin created. Well, he just had an idea and couldn't do it. And I turned that into a functioning gig venue. Again, organising bands and electricity, people coming in, going, just the fact that it actually happened was a huge organisational thing. At Stonehenge, I liked the Tibetan things. I was saying the guy with the white face with a star on his face who could organise things, who could fix things, and kind of run it without being flustered, but also looking great. You could look great and be an organizer. You wasn't one or the other. You didn't have to be a poser. Going back to the punk thing, almost the way you can look great and do things.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have greasy hair and dirty jeans to be the guitarist. You could look great and do it. I suppose glam rock. I suppose you go back to glam rock for that as well. But then glam rock,
Oh
we
yeah.
didn't know how to be. Glam rock was kind of out there somewhere. These people could do it. We were just the audience.
Yeah.
And punk brought that look and that feeling. So in that sense, that I was searching for a star, if you like, searching for that feeling again. And circus circus brought it for me, gave it, I found it there. I saw it there.
A lot of people, I would imagine, would think you're very brave to sort of head off into Europe, which is, of course, a collection of countries that all speak foreign languages, as we would see it. And you don't know what awaits, and also different cultures, different customs. So, you can probably get in quite hot water if you're not aware of various things.
Yeah, I had gone in '79. I'd gone and lived in France, Belgium, and Holland briefly in that summer. And then again in 1980, I just spent 6 months traveling around. So it wasn't that unknown a quantity. I knew what was across the channel. One of the difficulties we're gonna come across is when we started busking is currency. The currency's changed at every border, and
Right. Right.
there's something remarkable. You can be in one place. I remember one place and you get like a lot of money, and it's actually not. You couldn't buy much with it. And another place we went to Switzerland. We were busking in Switzerland, and they had like three. This shilling. Or their currency somehow it was 3 to something worthwhile, like 3 to a pound. That would equivalent to a pound. So their small coins were like 30p's. And you could buy a lot when you put three of those together, you could buy something decent. And they had their coinage was often these three, you had say one and these thirds, and you had other ones that were that equivalent of a £5 note coin. And often because there were coins, they'd often get them in a hat.
Yeah. Oh, I remember the introduction of the pound coin. I think I was possibly still busking at that point, and the introduction of the pound coin was a life changer.
I think even the 20p. And
Right. Yeah.
I went to Southern Ireland twice. We're jumping way ahead here, but this is quite an interesting thing about that money. And the first time I went, they didn't have the 20p or the pound coin, and the second time I went, they had them in the Irish equivalents, the punts, and the hats were huge. The difference was enormous, huge. I remember at Covent Garden, busking at Covent Garden, the pound coin revolutionised it. Suddenly, a hat would go from £20 to £50.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
£2 did nothing. The £2 did nothing. It's just strange because you think when that came out, this is it. But no one's really used them. It's never really taken off in all these years. The £2 coin.
No, it's true. Yeah. I don't think I've
Also,
ever seen one.
people feel it in the pocket. It looks too heavy. It looks like it's worth too much. It's not. It's only £2. Give it.
Did you play the borders in the same way that the sort of hippies who went on the hippie trail did, in the sense that they learned that you could buy something in one country, sell it in another? Did you, from what you're saying about, say, Switzerland, you could feasibly have earned your money in Switzerland, then popped across the border to spend it in France or something like that?
Yeah, I think we did with Swiss, because you had to change it. You couldn't take your Swiss money to, so you couldn't spend that in France. Where they want francs or no thanks, and you finish up with just piles of what you do. That sometimes you'd swap with other traveling buskers.
Okay.
You'd have mini exchanges. Oh, you're going to there. I'll tell you what, you want to have these, mate. And yeah.
Was it a subculture in that sense? Could you recognize people on the street? Did you bump into a lot of people through some other way? How does that work?
Yeah, I think if you're busking, let's go back to day one. Let's go back. That's a bit of a context. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to us crossing borders?
Okay, yeah.
We can show we already let the cat out of the bag. We did it. We didn't just give up in a week and go home.
Yeah.
We actually carried on.
In your Renault.
We did spend a week camped out. We went just after the convention. We didn't actually do anything for a week except for a bender, branches and tarpaulin in a little lay-by, and just thought, what the hell? What are we going to do now? Sort of plan ahead.
Right.
And so we spent about a week thinking about what we're going to do. Then we went to the nearest town, and it seemed what seemed to work was me doing the show. We kept trying to work out a double act. We had a double act before, but somehow there it didn't work. There's too much words. We realized the big mistake. We put lots of words in it, and now you're abroad. Forget the words. So we had to kind of re-rehearse a show without words in it.
And what was the show? What were you doing?
It's just juggling. You're passing clubs to each other. and you'd be
Okay.
shouting something and making a joke about the passing routine or a trick or some sort of thing. And then we do a thing where you steal the clubs off each other. You walk around each other taking the clubs, and be some sort of back chat about it. And you realise this chat means nothing to the audience. I think, well, how to speed through this. To answer your question, when we started busking, we did go out. After that, we went to places and started to perform. And where we perform, where places where there were squares and towns, there would be other performers. And you saw other circus performers, a lot of Americans, some who'd been at the convention, some who hadn't. And you'd always speak to them. Because these are your people. There was definitely a tribe, a subculture of performers. And you speak, and then they'd say more about where they've come from, what's good up there and what's bad up there. I was just trying to think what your question is. So yeah, there's definitely a thing about where to go, and I remember there's so much. There's a huge amount to say, but a lot of it's probably tedious unless you're actually part of that chess club. I love your chess club analogy now. This is because it's niche and it's boring and incomprehensible unless you're part of it. But I remember once we went to Trier. I remember going up to Trier, which I'd never heard of before. Like, I think from Belgium we went into Luxembourg, and Luxembourg into Germany, and then back down. I remember the Belgium-Luxembourg border was invisible. I remember this one. We came out, getting out the car, trying to put some petrol in, and saying, how far is Luxembourg? And I thought, you're in it. You're here. Oh my God. But I made a place called Trier that no one's ever heard of. It's right on the border. And it was fantastic. It was like almost beginnings of discovering unknowns. I think it's a light bulb moment there, because no one had ever heard of it. We'd certainly never heard of it. But it was a lovely town, lovely big walking street. And lots of performers. It was almost like a mini convention. Lots of people, we'd never heard of it until we got there. And there's other performers who were there who was part of the secret history of Europe. Go to Trier, and because there's a lot of American army bases nearby. This part of, and they used to get dollars, lots of dollars. And then what do they do with these dollars? And then one of the performers said, just spend them. They take them here in Trier. It's practically the currency. And I just something that has suddenly become, oh, wow, this is it. We're here. We're not going. We've gone past the point where we have to go back. We're now making enough, and we're secure enough. And I think from Trier, and there's something about Heidelberg. Went to Heidelberg, which I thought would be great. I thought it was a very philosophical kind of hotbed or grounding of Heidelberg. And Kant was there. Anyway, like monsters, like a Monty Python sketch there. It's all there. All the famous philosophers were all there, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great compared to Trier. This is kind of after Trier. Well, we've done Trier, now we're going to go to Heidelberg. It's a big place. We're looking at Trier's small, but Heidelberg's big. We're going to make it now. If we can make it in Trier, you can make it anywhere. We got to Heidelberg, and it wasn't great. They didn't take the dollars. We were back to getting Deutschmarks, but two things happened there. One, there was a South American band. This is kind of something that was interesting. Further on, there's a South American band where they play the panpipes and everything and all this.
Yeah.
And these guys, they'll dominate a square. They'll turn up. It's not just the band; it's a whole crowd of them, and they'll carry on. They'll come and go. One will go. The guitarist will go. Someone else will pick up the car and carry on. They didn't follow the etiquette of doing a half-hour show or a 20-minute show and let someone else start. They would dominate a square for a whole day. So they became the antithesis of the niceness with the pans pipes, the pans people. And we had to fit around them. We just had some do a show whilst they're playing. It's the way we work. And we do organize our own little rotas between whoever's busking, and let these guys just do what they do. And as we drifted south from there, it's about as far north as we got to Heidelberg. We started going south. That's when we went down the German-French border, backwards and forwards, which is great for the currency. We had no idea about what you're talking about, buying something cheap in one place and expensive the other. Apart from fuel was very cheap on one side. I can't remember which country it was cheaper in. The only time we did it was actually trying to fill up on the right side of the border and try not get caught out on the wrong side.
Mm.
And we went down that border all the way down into Switzerland. And then so we discovered in Switzerland the great currency. You seem to get a fortune. For the same amount of money, looking at your hat, it was actually a fortune, even more than the dollars. And we got down to Bern, the centre capital of Switzerland, Bern. And there's lots of Pans people, masses of these people everywhere. We've seen them going across the border, we've seen them down, especially more in Germany than France, we'd seen these people. And it wasn't the same group. Is that the same group? No, it's not, it's a different one.
Yeah.
And somewhere in Montreux, there was a Pans Pipe Festival.
Oh, right. Okay.
And these people were all going, these bands are all heading, it's exactly the same route we were heading into Switzerland. And that's why we kept running into them all the time. But every single Pans Pipe band in Europe was on that route, same route as us. Hilarious.
You're not in the south at all, are you? Were you not tempted to chase the sunshine?
This is what happened next.
Okay.
I think it's in Heidelberg. I think someone told us about going to Switzerland. That's why we headed south. And then I think with us in Switzerland, we went out to Geneva because I knew the south of France from the grape picking and the apple factory and everything. So we went out from Bern to Geneva, which is a disaster. I put it on my list. I was writing a little diary at the time. I was writing a little travelogue about busking in towns, and Geneva is definitely a one-star town. Forget it, mate. There's no centre. And anywhere we stopped to try and perform, no one was in disdain. That's a disaster. To cross the border into France, it's phenomenal. Everyone loved it. It's like walking to a festival compared to Geneva. And then when somewhere as we crossed that border, someone there told us, we ran into somebody who told us that there was a circus festival kind of meetup, traveling circus festival meetup in northern Spain. And in November. By this point, September, October. And because we start to see more, so like we've seen Pans Pipe people heading into Switzerland, and now we're in France, there's lots of performers, more than you'd expect in the town. And so we found out, or someone told us this is happening. And so that's our destination. It's getting cold, like you say, we're heading to the sun. The plan was to head for the sun. And so we did. And a place like Orange, well, places I've gone to do the grape picking, Orange, Montpellier, Avignon. I've got some photos from me at Avignon, of the two of us performing in Avignon, which I might send over to you later. We ran in Avignon. We ran into people that I knew from the School for Fools, and they were doing. Oh, you remember Ollie Wisdom from Specimen?
Oh, I do, yes, yeah.
Yeah, his brother. Who's now embarrassing. I can't remember because he was this girl called Charlie, and Mr. Wisdom, we'll call him. Anyway, they were there, and they'd had a traveling van. They were doing the same thing, busking around. They hadn't gone to the European convention. They'd spent their time in Spain.
Can I ask you about circuses? Because you talk about circus convention. Now, most people, certainly of our mutual vintage, would have grown up with Billy Smart's circus.
Big old things, yeah.
That kind of jazz with the big top and all the kind of related things, really. Is there any connection between that and what you're talking about, or is this a separate world?
Oh, like you, even at this point, I thought the same as you. I thought I'd get there and it'd be like huge Billy Smart size circuses, and what's the point of us going there? Because it's not for us. It's circus, people with heritage and people born into their troops, a whole closed world of circus. But then we said, no, it's not like that. This is for people like us traveling around. And the crossover, we'll get to the crossover in November. In about 5 years' time.
Okay.
It's amazing. All this happened so
part
quickly.
18 or something.
And then in Avignon, Avignon was incredible because we ran into this couple, and they were doing the same as we were doing. And they were from, the old country.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible feeling. We were sitting there having this chat, and there's photos of me in the square with Charlie and Mr. Wisdom sitting in the seats watching us, which is an incredible photo, incredible moment in time. All you get from that picture is we're pretty feral, gone pretty feral at this point, which we didn't expect. And I'm dressed kind of circusy, but my hair's still bleached blonde, but it's pretty mad. There's a look in my eye where I've left civilization behind. Which, but I think one of the things there, we when we went to their van, Charlie's van, and we're still taking the bender. We're making this bend every night. Every time we travel, we have to go and set this damn thing up. We carried it on the back, on the top of the car. Also meant we had to go to campsites. At this point in France, in Avignon, you couldn't just wild camp. Other parts we could wild camp. Here we had to pay for a campsite. And they were saying, well, they just park up on the side of the street. It's free. You know, you don't have to spend money. And this is the beginning of, well, why don't we get a van? Because we've gone and thought, if Mark doesn't get the van, no one gets a van. If Mark doesn't get a bus, we can't. Well, so I think we didn't think about that really being over there. We didn't see any hippie buses or stuff. We didn't see them. Eyes are going to be open soon, but we didn't see any of that until we saw her van. I thought, oh, you can travel in a van. You can do that by yourself. You don't have to be part of the whole Tibetan Ukrainian mountain troop. You can just go by yourself in a van. This is seeds of growing here. Then we went over the border. We went into Esparreguera, this place Esparreguera. I found out where it was, just north of Barcelona, and expecting Billy Smart's circus-style tents and everything. And it was hippie buses. It was the Tibetan Ukrainian mountain troop from Stonehenge. All camped up, all the vans, same things I've seen in Stonehenge, all in this field. And a couple of big tops, not Billy Smart size, but, you know, biggish. Two of those were set up, but all around it was the Tibetans and some vans, some people like us with small cars, other hippie buses, lots of buses and things. Where's all this come from? It was like a mini Stonehenge festival, and nothing to do with Billy Smart.
Really?
Nothing to do with Billy Smart and that idea of circus. Though they were selling it as a circus festival to the locals. Probably they got someone who knows what they're doing, which I probably is Tibetan Tony, who was an incredible organizer. He probably got this set up on the strength of it being a Billy Smart, a nice, respectable, all lovely, funny clowns. You know, not wild, drug-taking punk circus clowns. Which is what we were, which is what we became, and.
What you were? Was there a lot of old punks and stuff, or even hippies?
Not punks. There was the hippies at this point. We're running into people who we'd never seen before in our lives. They're English or Scottish or Welsh. We'd never seen them before in our lives. They weren't part of the British circus revival, or or the workshops or anything of the School for Fools. They've been out there all this time. They had their own life. Lots of Americans who've just gone straight to Paris. That seems to be the route. America to Paris, and then spread out from Paris. But looking like punks.
Not looking like punks, but people with a punk background, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much of an alternative. I mean, it sounds like an alternative lifestyle, clearly, but I'm wondering if it's one with kind of roots to other ones, or if you're just some sort of outlier who happens to be a punk rocker.
Again, and that's what we kind of thought we were. It was even like Charlie and Mr. Wisdom, and his name will come to me. They weren't part of the punk scene. They were straight. They're from acting school. There's root, or obviously Wisdom through his brother liked the dressing up, and the specimen look, or the punk and then specimen. And he probably went through the same kind of things as me. He liked to dressing up and wanted to dress up but couldn't play guitar.
Yeah,
or well enough to be in a band. So circus was his route. Whereas I think Charlie went through more of an actress route. They went to drama schools and things, found that too boring, and then sort of picked up, went from that kind of performance side into circus, rather than punk rock and music. But when we were there at this Aspergera, there were people from the Midlands and the north of England who had the punk rock background.
Okay.
And we soon met up and hung out with them. And then people from the School for Fools crowd turned up for the main weekend of Aspergera. It was 3 days, and they turned up on I think the second day, the Saturday. And so there was another wave, and I said, "Oh, we saw Charlie. Oh, no, lovely. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen you for years." And all this. Then I guess me and Cravat were like seen as like incredible. We did this. This is everyone's dream. From the School for Fools kind of crowd, as even the punk crowd, is to actually do this, to actually go out and step out there and do it, and don't come home. So we're being lauded, and this whole crowd come down from the Midlands. They had a big bus and some smaller trucks. They were a real unit, but they were breaking apart. They were falling apart. They'd done what we were going to do. They had done the Mark Mob kind of concept, heading off, but they hadn't taken music. They didn't really think about having music, so they were trying to perform, solely do it on show. And me and Cravat did it because there's two of us, and sometimes if you didn't get much, sometimes you got loads in your hat. But they were trying to do it with quite a lot of people, and they weren't attracting enough money to keep themselves going. And so they had all sorts of falling outs going on. So, and they knew about Aspergera before they left. They knew about this festival before they left England, which shocked me. And we didn't see them anywhere on the route, so we don't know what route they took to get there. I'm saying this because actually that answers the question. There were some people who had that sort of punk music background, got into circus, but they weren't the London people, and they certainly had that punk ambience. So there was a certain, when they did the shows and we were doing our shows, we did shows together, we started messing about and doing combined shows together. There's very much, it's all kind of fiery, falling over, a bit more bawdy, a bit more dangerous than normal clowning, if you like. So I'm trying to separate it. What is this punk circus feel? So we brought that punk attitude of like a bit more aggressiveness, a bit more immediate, and brashness. And then they were the musicians from the Tibet. They came and used to play, and some of them started playing with us, giving us a backing. So we were creating a new scenery from the three teams of the Tibet. These people from the Midlands, and me and Cravat and all the School for Fools people. Because it wasn't the one flaw in this plan of this festival. Hardly anyone came. Hardly anyone came. And those who did were kind of shocked, but it wasn't what they expected. They were expecting Billy Smarts.
Sure.
And so it's just really just like a case we could just mess around all day. We could do things like this all day. So we were creating new shows.
Was the life you were living, was that what you expected? Because there are things that are kind of very different, aren't they? Firstly, you've gone from London to little villages and so on and so forth, and spending your night by the side of roads or in fields and so on. So you've left all the excitement of the inner city behind. You've also quite poignantly, when you live that kind of life, left toilets behind, of course, and having to take a trowel and a toilet roll to wherever you can sort of find. Was any of that a challenge to you?
Probably. I remember having it more in 1980 when I was doing the grape picking, and I did quite an extended time, and I missed the bright lights. I was saying to people there, I've got to go. I've got to get out of here. I'm going crazy. I miss neon. I said, I miss neon lights. And I went to Barcelona. I went from where we were. I got a train, a bus all the way to Barcelona. And I remember walking down the Ramblers and all the noise and the city, the sounds of the city and the lights of the city. Was like, wow, just bathing in it, soaking it in. So what you're saying there, from that's great picking, living, in a small cottage. All you're doing is going to a field day and night. And so, wow, this is what I miss. But I think because we were busking, you were always heading towards the city, always heading towards stuff. So you weren't cut off from the urban environment.
Okay.
And of course, because you're going in and out of those environments, they had toilets and
Yes.
facilities
Yeah.
there, so it
Washing
wasn't.
facilities and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't too far away. So I do remember Charlie and Mr. Wisdom coming to our campsite, sneaking in with us and using our facilities, the shower block and the toilets. And they said what you were saying, flushing toilets, man, flushing toilets. This is the dream, living the dream.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but and that's even though they were performing the same places as us, same small towns, but because they had the bus, they kind of felt they had to go back to their bus. Was because me and Grant, we didn't have anywhere to go apart from the campsite miles away. So we just sit down and one would go to the toilet and the other one would go to the toilet.
Mm. Mm.
That's your toilet talk. But
Tony Drayton talks toilets.
we are going to come across that trail stuff though at Granada, like further down the line. Not that only a month. So what happened to you at the end of this 3 days in Esparreguera meant we met up in Granada. Everyone there, when we were all mucking around together doing our stuff, and we said we'll meet in Granada. You know, oh, yeah, blood brothers, isn't blood brothers? We are now. We are one. We are family. But we can't all travel together. We can't. Spain can't take all of us turning up in one en masse. So what we'll do, we'll go in groups. I think we went to 4 different groups, and we said we'll all meet down there. So Tibet split into 2, and this is where Granada, the trail and the toilet paper became quite a mass ritual in the morning. Quite a sight.
Right.
I left my heart in Granada and something else.
And something else as well. Yeah.
But which again shows you we actually did it. We managed to get to Granada, but we split into the 4 troops at the end of this thing. Tibet's split into 2. Tibet and Tony said even with the smaller group of just the Tibets, it's still too big. He just said, oh, I'm going to go north. Again, he's been there before, he knew all this stuff. He went north. He said he's going to go north and make his own way down, which is like into the hinterland, right into the madness. And we all kind of went down the coast. We sort of staggered it and went down the coast to Valencia, Alicante, Valencia, and then down that route. Well, we went to Barcelona. Me and Cravat were still together. We almost split up at this point because she was missing London. Like you say about the missing stuff, she was missing London, her friends and everything. Whereas for me, I was kind of following the dream. I thought this is it. Not only the lights taking us here, like the guiding light, the shining light of Bethlehem star, has brought us to here to Esparreguera, and now the next plan is to go Granada. Why can we not go? There's no reason, nothing. If you don't do that, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives. And she was, oh, we're friends, and all the rest of it. So we had a talk on the side of the road, and she decided to stay. But I think she didn't want to stay the 2 of us together. It was like too much, too intense. And so we met up with these 2 other fire breathers, another male-female fire breathing act. Well, we did fire breathing, unicycling, juggling, clowning. They did clowning and fire eating. We met up with them. I think now we still had the 4 counting. We still had the Renault 4. So I think how all 4 of us managed to get to Barcelona. But because it's not that far, it wasn't that far away, but we went to Barcelona, we stayed there in Barcelona, we bussed on the Ramblers and made a fortune. Unbelievable. What we were doing, they were Germans, there were 2 Germans, 2 English. And somehow, because it's just all this fire, we would just work almost solidly all night, like the Panpipes people. Either they would bust together and we'd go on after them and we'd just rotate on a spot on the Ramblers and we just rotate and just do show after show after show. I don't think we even said, I don't think where we stayed, we were making a fortune in pesetas, but I can't think where we stayed, how we actually provided, let alone the toilets, how we ate, how we slept. I can't remember. I just remember from this feeling, this energy from this Esparreguera, we went there, and this is the spirit. I think this is the kind of the go, you follow your dream.
This is really interesting, particularly when you're saying you made a load of money, because so many alternative lifestyles that are pursued by people are kind of just tough, aren't they?
Yeah,
And ultimately, in hindsight, doomed to failure a lot of the time. And a lot of that failure, I think, has possibly got an economic root. As in people have got no money, and that lends secondary stresses in various directions and so on.
yeah.
But it sounds to me like you thought you were winning, essentially.
At this stage, when we thought we were losing, we thought it was just the four of us would go like with the cravat thing. I think let's go to Barcelona. Let's go to these guys. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't work there, at least we're near a station. That was the kind of thing. And it went well. She was happy, and suddenly, I think it was the thing we were saying about we made the money because we had the direction, the dream, the focus. Was some people who don't make it, some alternative ideas, and like the people who from the Midlands who are struggling, it's because they haven't done their budget, haven't done their plan. There's too many people, and there's no dole money now. This is the big jump if you do that sort of thing. There's no dole money. There's no safety net.
Yeah.
If you don't make it, you don't make it. If you don't make it, you don't eat. But because again, and go back to the school for fools, we've been taught this. We've gone there because we wanted to do it. This was the plan. It wasn't just stumbling on it by accident. Like you see, some people who are just juggling for a hobby or fire breathing for a hobby wouldn't have made that money. They wouldn't have been able to had the nerve to stand in the ramblers. This is your big city, big noise, and make yourself heard and push yourself in these people, in the Spanish people, because they're like you. This Barcelona crowd, they'd gather around us and they would stay the whole night. Sometimes the crowd wouldn't go.
Yeah.
You'd be building this whole festival thing, building up and up and up. Or someone come and it generates when you get a crowd like that, it generates its own energy and people are drawn to it. So we were knocking them dead. But the game it wasn't by accident. I
Yeah.
mean, we'd worked on these shows, we'd worked on our own shows, and then we worked together on a mass show. It's very good, and we worked together on this two single acts merging into a double act. We started doing acrobatic balancing and stuff, like we're all on each other's shoulders, two people standing, two people on the shoulders, all fire breathing at the same time, like cascade, fountain of fire. This is good stuff.
It sounds pretty impressive, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty dangerous as well.
Hugely dangerous in those days. Even now, you wouldn't get away. Of course, you get away with it. And we must have stank like a garage.
Yeah.
I don't think we washed for a week. I don't know where we ever washed. But then for some reason, Barcelona, we had to leave. But then we left. Not had to leave. We weren't chased out of town. But these two people. One of them knew a hippie kind of crowd outside of Alicante. I don't think it was Valencia, but it's actually further up the coast. It's the next town down from Barcelona. We thought, let's go there. So we went to Alicante because we thought, let's have a breather. Think how we're going to get to Granada, because all four of us at this point come out back into the game. It's like how to get to Granada. We need something. We can't go there in this bloody car. So we went to the this hippie enclave, and there were hippie buses parked up, buses without wheels. These have been there for a while. And what's interesting, this part of Spain, in all of Spain, as we found out as we went further down, more into the interior, but all of Spain was having a constant carnival and coming out of the Franco years, which only ended in 77. So he ended 77, it was only gradually transforming about 79, 80. So we're right in, and these people, these hippie enclaves, have gone right in. Right, and really people knew what they're doing. They went right in the very early 80s, bought land, and it was nothing, and drove a hippie bus down there, and then that's it. They had this huge farms, hippie farms with travelers coming and going, and a whole talk about hidden lifestyles, hidden cultures. And this when you're saying when hippies dead and all this stuff. No, some people, this is what they did. They went there.
This was hippies doing this stuff, was it?
Yeah, this is the one people have gone
70s hippies or 60s hippies or
60s, 70s. Yeah, old people.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So the people who are from Frestonia, sort of that era, people who'd said, just carried on the alternative lifestyle, but taking it to the extreme. They'd seen, understood about Spain and Franco, and they've got a bit. Now you could get across the border. Now you could buy land. You could buy, and it's nothing cheap because Franco had killed the place.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Everything was dirt cheap. You couldn't buy. I mean, busking. They said at that point when they came over, it was nothing. No one had any money. There's no money, and
Of course,
you bust with sympathy.
in a contemporary sense as well, in the straight world, Spain had opened itself up as a holiday destination, hadn't it, because of Franco dying. So you had that
Yeah.
kind of going on in parallel, I guess, and that would have brought money in, I
Well,
suppose.
that was they were starting to find that. Yeah, that was all down the coast. There's monetizing the coast of Marbella, Malaga, Torremolinos, all these small villages, small fishing villages, were
Yeah.
suddenly becoming metropolises. But just inside there were still these people like this place near Alicante. Where Alicante then was still pretty small. I think now it's become more of a holiday resort, but then it was pretty small. So when we were here, I was starting to learn to drive the car. I was starting to learn to drive Cravat's car, the Renault 4, because another thing back there's nothing on the roads. A very small few things on the road. Even in France, when you went outside the main towns in that time, and there's no MOT laws or stuff like that, and they're very lax on licenses and car tax. So you see some strange things on the road, but not very many of them. So
Perhaps that's also a reaction to Franco in the sense that no, they had this freedom. They didn't particularly want to start getting all authoritarian about it, I
yeah,
guess.
exactly. The police, no one wanted to be a policeman.
Yeah.
They'd broken away from that. And hash was legal. They
Really?
legalized hash even at that time. Hash was legalized. Um,
I
and
didn't know that. Oh,
you see old guys drinking wine and smoking joints in Alicante bars and stuff.
wow.
Which is another reason for the hippies moving to Spain.
Wow, yeah. That would have been an attraction. Yeah.
It was a big attraction. So that's one thing about this. Yes, we've suddenly gone from Esparreguera, gone to the big city, made all this money, which we were then living off in this because we moved into this hippie enclave.
Mm.
I'm trying to think what we lived in. Did they give us a little? Yeah, they gave us a little barn or some outbuilding. They said you go and live in that. This is what it's like. It's just It's the whole massive space they had, and the buildings everywhere. Oh, you go and live in that one. And if you want to know your toilet talk, it was a dirt toilet, an earth toilet, like they have a Dial House.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You
I've got a terrible story about one of them. I'll tell you off camera.
had to go and dig. I think someone went and dug. We never had to do it. Dig another trench, and they'd fill one in, and go and dig another hole, put a plank over it, and that's your toilet.
Mm.
But
So
apart from that,
are you comfortable in all this environment? Did you sort of did you dovetail nicely with the hippies?
um, yeah, there were some people from London. It's funny, so even there's kind of cliques and things and gangs, and some people were very voluble, wanted to speak to us. Other people thought we're punk rockers. We don't know anything to do with the punk rockers. There might be, say, 30 people living there. Of the 30 people, we were very good friends with about 5. The people who owned it, this couple who owned it, were okay with us because they really knew this guy we went there with, one of the German guys. They really liked him from the past. And because of that, they tolerated us. We wouldn't, if me and Cravat just turned up, we probably wouldn't have been allowed to stay.
Mm.
Put it like that way. But the ones we spoke to were great. And they talked about their performing stories. They told us that's where we heard a lot about moving there in the very early 80s and what Spain was like in the early 80s. It was quite sobering because I hadn't really realised that. It hadn't really crossed my mind. But I think I knew about Stuart Christie, the anarchist,
Yeah.
his story, but it didn't make any sense to me until you're actually in Spain and you actually realise this is actually real. This is much story is like a story about Nazis and the resistance to the Nazis. It's too much to take in, too much to understand. You're actually in Spain and you're seeing people. You're going into a small village, just Alicante, outside Alicante, some of the smaller places. I think, Christ, this is what he was trying to stop. This is what Stuart was trying to stop Franco doing this to the country. And there's two notable things happened here before we move on. We're probably going to run out of time again, aren't we? We've barely gone anywhere. We've just gone down to Alicante. There's once in Alicante, I'd gone there, and a whole troop came in, and they were more punk rocky than we were, all dressed more visibly punk rocky English, and they were with this guy who I'd never seen before, and that was like a cult. Hard to explain. I wouldn't say zombies. I wouldn't say that zombies so much, but they seem to be a cult around this guy.
Okay.
And we trying to speak to them, and they were like, "Don't say they're not part of us. They're not one of us." And
these were punks.
they looked like much more punky than the performers anyone we'd seen for a long time, for years almost.
Right.
But they're sort of narco, that hippie. They drifted into the hippie. They were living out there, so they weren't like Kings Road punks. But there was spikiness and bleached hair, even cut crazy color. It's just, and then they went out again. I remember in this bar, and they went out again, and we never saw them ever again. And I mentioned it to when we went back up to where we were staying, and they'd never heard of them. They'd never heard of these people. No, don't anyone like that around here. We're the only people. So who the hell were they? Well, it's just weird. It's out of the blue, and it's the first close I've seen to a cult where you'd have the leader and all these people zombified following them. And even though they were dressed like punks and stuff, they didn't have any individuality, any laughing or normality to them. And they all went off again.
Sounds
So
a lot like
that
stuff you get in America in the 60s, doesn't it? The Children of God and all those kind of cults and stuff.
That's the only thing you could link it to. Someone who's taken like they take a hippie thing, or they say that the Manson thing, where they're linked to a hippie thing, but they're completely different. Like as you say, the other various cults sort of linked into the hippie thing. And this is like something who maybe linked into the hippie punks or circus at this point, or hippie punks, but wasn't part of it at all. And they never. And
that was interesting.
It's a crazy crowd, and in that sense, quite scary. And I thought, thank God we're not part of that, because I could see how you could drift down into Spain thinking, oh, I've got a friend who's living here, so this is great. Come down, join us. And the next thing you know, you're in that kind. Oh, don't worry, there's a few rules. Like where we were staying, there's no rules. That was like, Christ, who are these people? But the other big thing is we swapped the Renault 4 car for a van, an English van, slightly bigger, about the size of a Transit. I was trying to remember last night what the make is. It's quite a famous make. If I said it, you'd know it. It's got a short engine front, a short bonnet.
Very short. I don't know anything about
it. No, okay.
I don't even know why I said that.
The reason why the short bonnet is because someone said much further on the line, said it looks like a police vehicle because of the short bonnet. They make police vehicles have these short bonnets, with other cars normally have much bigger one, and it didn't cross our minds. But we managed to swap the van. This guy who used to live in this van wanted to go back to England, and he didn't want to take this van. He said the Renault 4 was insured and it's taxed. He could cross the borders with it. So for that reason, he said, okay, we'll swap. So this is the first of our swaps. We swapped the car for a van, which all the four of us could then travel in with a bit more comfort. And again, it's all converted into a living quarter. There's a bed that folded out. You'd lift up the boot bit, and there's a whole kitchen in there at the back.
Right. Yeah.
All very nicely done. And so this is the first of our swaps. I say the first because I'm jumped forward again with this van. I eventually swapped this van for the hippie bus that had come down from the Midlands.
Right.
In Granada, I managed to swap that van, even though I couldn't drive it. Spoiler alert, cravat left.
Right.
I had a van that I couldn't drive, so I swapped it for a bus I couldn't drive. And the bonus was the bus came with a driver, because the lady who owned it had fallen out so badly with this guy. She couldn't stand him in it. She couldn't say she wasn't only divorcing him, she was divorcing the bus. And fallen for this guy who did a horse riding show, a horse riding act,
Oh, yeah.
who's also been in Esparreguera, and he was in Granada, and he hadn't brought his horse to Granada, so he was kind of a bit footloose. But he was quite a nice guy, charming man. He could drive, and so we swapped our bus. Well, I swapped, but became mine and Cravat's bus, mine and Cravat's van, for this bus with the driver, and he went off in my little van, wherever they were going to go. So I finished up setting out from London in a Renault 4 yellow car. I'm now sitting in Granada with a giant bus with a driver, and yes, may as well jump to that. Yeah, so we, for excitement, we went all the way down to Granada. Me in this van, Cravat, me, and these two other fire eaters. We got to Granada, and the majority of the people were there. All the Tibetans, both sets of Tibetans, people from the Midlands, all met up in Granada, and parked up somewhere out of town. And unbelievable, it actually happened. I couldn't believe. I thought we'd be the only ones there.
Mm.
And then everyone showed up. I was like, now what do we do? I mean, we used to go down to the town. There's a big square, and we do shows by ourselves, individual shows, not a big show. But on Christmas Day, we did a show with 44 people. A show with, including musicians, all the band, about 20 in the band, 15, 20 in the band, and us performers all coming on and off, or working together, doing a big fire breeze. And we took that square, unbelievable. 40, it's like that was Billy Smarts. That was beyond Billy Smarts at that point. And this is a real show of strength. And I remember once I was at a unicycle, when I acted with the unicycle, I used to get people out from the audience to help me get on it. And I got this guy out, and he's called Jesus. It was Christmas Day, remember? This guy was called Jesus. What's your name? Jesus. Oh, happy birthday. In Spanish, of course. And then as he's helping me onto it, I managed to knee him in the face.
Oh dear. Very Christian of you.
Very good. Jesus wept.
Very good.
But I remember that show. That show. The mayor of Granada came up afterwards, and I thought we were in trouble. I thought, this is it. You're going to say, don't ever come and don't ever darken our door again. Get out now. Leave our town. And he came out and said, thanks very much. He's really full of appreciation. For them, it cost them nothing. And they had this show, this constant entertainment in the square, Christmas Square. I think it made national news. But so it was nice. It didn't give us any money, but it was kind of, thanks for coming to my town. Thanks for doing this in our town. But what we had to go back to our trowels and toilet paper, because we're all parked up on this way out of town. Every morning there's like a little shallow hill running down to town, and we'd all go out there with our trowels and our toilet roll, and all sit together, sit and shit, sit and shit and dig our holes. What a sight that was.
Yeah,
There's no shame. There's nothing else you could do. There's no embarrassment to it. Everyone's just out there shitting away.
Yeah,
digging holes.
Yeah. So how long did you keep at all this?
So that was Christmas Day. I mean, we were there at Granada for Christmas. So that's about 1 month, 6-7 weeks took us to get to Granada. And then, what do we do next? What do we do next? There's some idea of meet up again, but that was kind of there's nowhere to go. I don't think it was ever really thought out. But what happened? The Tibetans decided to go their own way. They said, we can't do this again. They sort of joined up again. But at least one of their members, Magic Michael, an American magician, he jumped ship and joined us. He came to the bus. This is when I got the bus, and the girl and the horse rider went off. They'd gone. We're starting to disintegrate a bit, and Magic Michael came to the bus and says, "Can I join you guys?" And I said, "Well, great, but we're not. There's none of us at this point. Whether there's Cravat still with us at this point now. Somewhere Cravat's gone off. Somewhere on this journey down in the van, Cravat had gone back. She had to go back, either Alicante or Valencia or somewhere. But she'd gone off and left me with the van. So someone was always someone to drive it. I think there's always someone could drive it. But when we got here, there's like, obviously this is a temporary to get to Granada, then we'll sort out something at Granada, i.e. me driving. All the time I was learning to drive, I was starting to drive it more and more. And so I'd learned to drive with the Renault van, the Renault car on the back streets of Spain. So I started to learn how to drive. And then we got the bus. So then that went off and we got the bus. Because actually, when Tibet said they're going to be by themselves, and Magic Michael said, I want to go with you guys. I thought, well, we better find out who we guys are. And the one flaw with this driver is a flaw and a gem, as he had the hippie, he was much older than everyone else. He had the hippie festival ethos, but he loved the festival. His idea was having these meetings. That's what he lived for. And he wanted to create that en route. Wherever we went, he wanted everyone on bus, an open door policy. Which, what could I do? He was driving the bus. I owned it, but he was driving it, and it's all done. What can you say? Walk into a whole complete done up bus. It's called Hazy Days. There's still pictures of it somewhere. A giant coach, giant Bedford coach, and when we decided those who were left, those who weren't Tibetans, some of the people from the Midlands decided didn't want to be more hippie. They thought this guy, bus driver, that was too hippie. They wanted to be smart. They brought lots of makeup with them, day glow makeup and stuff, and they were going a bit sharper. And in some ways, I just thought, I like that look, but I didn't like their ethos so much. I quite liked being out there. We're now so far down in Spain, so far away from anything, and even more feral than I looked like. The way I looked feral in Avignon, we looked like wild men. We had left civilization long ago, and they were trying to go back. And I think they saw money. They could see money in Malaga and Marbella, Torremolinos. They wanted to do that route. And Harry's going, I don't want to go to these tourist places. I'm kind of torn. I said, well, what do I do? Do I abandon the bus? Say to Harry, okay, but it's your bus now. You go with your dream. I'm gonna go with these guys. And I thought I didn't really like. I thought they weren't going to last. What they're trying to do, they haven't got the plan. At least I've got a bus. And so we kind of took the dregs. What happened there was they went off. There were all these people dressing up with their makeup and all this stuff. And I think it was something because Cravat had left some stuff and they grabbed it all. Cravat had some day-glow makeup and all this stuff. Next thing I know, they were all just putting it all over themselves. And that kind of put me off them. I thought, yeah, you don't really appreciate that.
Yeah. It's
just like scabbard like locusts. So that's the thing that's just come to me now. That's the reason that kind of put me off them. And everyone was left. Magic Michael luckily stayed with us. He said he had the same misgivings with it when he spoke about it with the other lot. He thought there's no fun, basically. There's something wrong with that lot. So we had the hippie, Harry wanted a hippie festival everywhere he goes. And Magic Michael has a phenomenally good show. It was me, had a show. And some guitarists, some French hippie guitarists who like dressing up, but they played guitar. If you know French guitarists, they do like a bit of prog rock. They don't understand, never understood glam rock, the power of the punch. But they had them and odds and sods we had. And then we went a bit along the coast. We went to Cartagena. There's more of us than that. There's about 10 of us, I think, 10 of us on this bus. We're all just on the same bus. Everyone was on the bus.
Sounds like chaos.
It's
on the subject of British standing, subject of prog rock, in fact, we don't want to go on too long here, so we want to be thinking about when to wind up this episode.
All right. Oh, crikey. Okay. Okay. We set off because we've gone into two camps, and they call themselves Circus Fuck Off Cough, and we call ourselves Ambulanti Dilettanti. The fuck off cough because everyone was coughing. And one thing, the common thing was they're smoking these terrible Spanish cigarettes and living in dusty environments, and everyone was coughing all the time. Everyone coughed, and there was a fuck off cough. And they again, why they called themselves that when they were trying to be a professional outfit.
Yeah, right.
Again, show the contradictions in them. Whereas we call ourselves ambulanti dilettanti because it sounded nice. And we went off. We went up for a little bit of the coast. Went to Cartagena. I remember this one because we did so well on the weekend. We had enough to go to the coast, to go to a little cave area and live for a week on our proceeds. I thought this is what we should be doing. This is how we should be doing this. No, don't squander our money in the cities. Make enough and go. You know, take some money, have a rest, take some money. That never happened again, unfortunately. We went inland after a long way. We went inland because we wanted to see what it was like inside inland, and very much an eye opener. Going still heading west, heading west towards Portugal. And we started performing in small villages, and that was an incredible environment, where the fuck off coughs would never get, or Tibetans would never get, because there's too many vehicles. They're quite small places. And you go to a small village, and it had one town square, and we're still in this is where you saw the Franco effect, that houses didn't really have inside toilets or electricity. There wasn't much TV. Everyone lived in these squares. There's lots of bars and small tavernas in these squares, lots of outside tables. Also very warm. That's how the southern Spain temperature, even in winter. And we'd show up, we'd go into the square, and it was a carnival. It's an absolute carnival. They just go crazy. Because no one's they've forgotten, they're forgotten places.
Sure.
Forgotten since the Second World War. And we just show up in them and all that stuff. And we're like aliens. So right, we said, one person said, it was like aliens landed. And it's just a great big show. Wasn't much money. It's very little money in Spain, even in those days. You know, it's a couple of years after Franco. And that were incredible. Those experiences that live with me. This is it. And you're saying, did I do the right thing? Compared to writing an album review in the NME, this was living all right. This absolutely at my fullest, at my best.
Yeah.
I remember at some point I was wearing women's clothing. I started to wear these green dresses with red tights on the unicycle, and my blonde hair was huge at this point. And just gone. I said, I left civilization. I think Cravat had left them, or someone else's girlfriend had left, had gone home and left all this stuff. I thought, this is great. This looks nice. My God.
I didn't expect that one.
It's a good look. It's good look. We got to this kind of exploration of the interior. We're carrying on to Algeciras, it's called the bottom quarter of Spain. There's a small town called Algeciras, which is where the ferry goes to Morocco.
Okay.
And there was an incredible vibe around that town and the roads into it and out of it. We were staying somewhere slightly out of town. And there's these zombie cults that we talked about before in Alicante. Seem to be some of them there as well, where people would be hitchhiking us onto the bus and they'd jump off somewhere and back and beyond and wander off. And they didn't seem to be all there. They seem to be kind of hypnotized or something. Because that part of Spain was awash with people, the drifters, the wanderers of Europe, hitchhikers, and all people no location, what they wanted to travel, they didn't know how to do it or where to go. There's a vague idea maybe of going to get to Morocco, getting across on the ferry to Tangier. My God, if these people had gone to Tangier, they'd been eaten alive. There's this Algeciras is full of people sitting around, all these kind of hippie vagabonds, even punk vagabonds, all sitting there in Algeciras talking about making the money to get to Tangier. What a town! Not a place to busk. There's a 1 star on my busking list.
Yeah, on your TripAdvisor for buskers. It sounds like quite tragic what you're saying there, actually.
It's incredible, because it's actually one of the poorest parts of Spain as well. It's just not very fair on the locals because they're struggling and they've got all these people just drifting. It's almost like the plug hole, the sink plug hole or bath plug hole, because it's gradual drift towards the plug from Copenhagen down to Algeciras. But remarkable to see. I'm glad I saw it, because it's never been
How long did you spend altogether then, from like when you set off with Cravat to Belgium to sort of when you rejoined what would you say, normal society or whatever? How long is that period?
Well, I came back in. We left about August, or even September. Actually, September. This festival, the convention, September, I came back in April '86. So all this is only taking place in 7 months, a 7 month
Really?
period.
I thought you might say, like 6 years or something.
Oh, amazing.
I do understand that when you're living that kind of lifestyle, a lot happens in a short space of time, doesn't it? Because the rest of the time in life for the majority is spent going to work, watching telly, going to the pub or whatever, doing stuff that is perhaps the stuff in between living rather than the actual living. But, yeah,
Yeah, in fact, every bit of life is vital. Every bit you're living is vital. Was listening. There's lots of gaps. If you're living up the 9 to 5, as I know
yeah,
now, there's
yeah.
lots of it are irrelevant, grey areas. But there's every bit means something.
I want to finish this bit. Um,
I think it's a bit of a sticky one here because Portugal. We go from Algeciras into Portugal.
yeah,
Portugal out through the Basque Country. Uh, and so many stories there that it's hard to grasp. Um, could be interesting, could be tedious. If you say them, so let's just I'll cut to that bit. Then we've got through. Imagine that, gone through Portugal. There was the carnival. I missed the carnival season. We saw in Cadiz and around Cadiz area when actually Spanish do have the real carnival in This would be about January then, about January, February. Can't go there. Anyway, everyone was dressed up. The same. We were kind of the same as everyone else. It's hard to busk because everyone was all dressing up, but we managed to do it. But that was a great to see. All these small, especially the smaller villages, the whole place would be carnivalized for a day or a week. Anyway, that was great stuff. Got through Portugal, rushed through this, then went through the Basque Country. We didn't go to the north of Portugal from Lisbon. It was a big decision. So I could say Cravat joined us again. Cravat and more people from the Black Sheep came down and joined us in Portugal. And all the stories went Albufeira, kind of a Torremolinos type place. They came down. We did have a problem with this, of some people coming down on holiday, joining us and eating all our food, not performing, but eating the food, taking up space, and then buggering off again, or just staying with us. And I think with Harry as well, at this point, Harry would pick up hitchhikers. We'd always pick up a hitchhiker anyway, but Harry was definitely pick these hitchhikers up. And they'd never get off. Let's keep going. Oh, we're going to so and so. And 2 weeks later, I say, well, actually, you never get off. They're learning to juggle or fire eat or something, and they're still with us. And Harry's like, well, so what? I actually preferred them. There's quite a few of them, and some of them joined the show and became part of the show. And as Harry said, I prefer them to the tourists, the ones who come down from London and think they're great, and then they don't give anything to the show, and they just take our resources. So we had all that was going on as well. It was an interesting time. Anyway, in Lisbon, we thought we can't go to Porto. There's not enough small towns between Lisbon and Porto. At this point, we'd worked out logistically that in Portugal, there's nothing. There's no small villages. You look on the map, what there is what there is.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's nothing to you can't because you always look at map and dot. How far can we get to the next town? So we went east, and so we finished up in Salamander. I think it was Salamander. Incredible place, a huge town, huge square. I'm not the boy with all the great shows we did. We did some phenomenal stuff, and the Basque people, absolutely great. What great people! What great people! So friendly, so enthusiastic, and so ready to party. And what times they were! We left them. Came out through San Sebastian into Biarritz. I'll say here we finished up at this point. We got over that border, but there was some difficulties. Even the French were starting to get a bit leery about car tax and things, and who owns this vehicle. The person who owned the vehicle was miles away. She has gone off in the bus, gone off in the van. Who owns this bus? So we managed to get it over a border. We managed to get it out of Spain into Portugal because Spain just told the customs we got. You got to take them that border. So the Spanish Portuguese border. It was a ferry crossing. from Oof, it's called, and they gave us a ferry. We blocked a whole route into the ferry. At that point, it wasn't just the buses. We had quite a few trucks with us as well, vans. Because we came and we grew and we left, especially in Portugal. It was nice weather. This place, somebody went up to 24, 30 people again. Sometimes we were 12 of us, next time we were 24 with all these vans. We blocked the whole route into the ferry port.
How
And
do you feel?
they gave us the ferry. They said, just go on. This guy came out to us. There's one ferry just for us.
Wow.
At the other end, they were told the Portuguese customs just go. They can't send us back. Spain weren't going to take us back. This ferry company weren't going to do it again. So he said, I'm trying to jump forward to what happens next, what the reasons for what happened next. On the French border, it was difficult to get across. We finished up in another hippie enclave on the French past Biarritz. There's a bit where Gong used to, when Gong's first album came out, they were living there.
Okay, right, yeah.
And there's pictures of that place and its location all around the Gong history. Another place where people went out to France. The hippies went to France, never went as far as Spain, had established themselves in this little place. Again, we knew people who knew people there. And there's a whole German punk house in the middle of this enclave, which we all moved into. I think I lived in a chicken coop at one point. Then we had to make a decision that we're not going to cross another border. We had some plan to get to either the European Juggling Convention or another convention somewhere further north. And we thought we'd get there and we're going to make it. We're going to come with our show, a big show, hit this place, and that's it. But we've got to cross the border. To cross the border, I had to get a driving license. I think I could drive the bus at this point, but I needed to get a driving license. So I said, right, I'll go to London, get my driving license, come back. It'll take a week. It was about April 86. And I never came back.
You mean you went to London and you never came back
I
from
went to, I left
Yeah.
everyone there, this hippie enclave.
Yeah. I bumped into you in Stoke Newington when you just got back from all that. And what's really mad for me is you told me you've been doing stuff. I mean, you told me a kind of 30-second version of what you'd been doing, and it's really kind of weird hearing it now and hearing what you'd actually kind of been through in all that time. When, of course, in the equivalent time period, I'd sort of probably done very little at all, really, and and you hadn't been away that long or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah,
What have you done recently? I've been in Spain.
yeah, like as though been on holiday in Benidorm or something like that. I was saying to you just before we started this about the film Walkabout, when right at the end, Jenny Agutter, after doing all this incredible adventure in the outback, is living this really back to normal life with a husband and a family and a flat. And at the very end of the film, she hugs her husband, and the film camera homes in on her eyes over his shoulder. And you can tell she's just thinking back to the life she had. And you've got these two to have lived in two different worlds in one lifetime, which is what you've done. So what I was wondering was, how do you feel like talking to me today about all this? How does it make you feel?
It's quite scary. I was lucky. I spent a lot of time last night thinking about it and writing down some of the route. Otherwise, I've been umming and ahhing all the way through this, and which is annoying to everyone, especially to me. So I tried to work out some chronology, and I was amazed how short a time it was that all this happened. Like saying, and I'm really skipped so many stories, so many things, just to get to
No,
France.
sure. But what's your emotions like right this second?
Well, I think again, what I've skipped is a lot of pain, a lot of regret, and a great deal of pain and pain and shame. Sometimes my shame, sometimes other people's shame. And you can go from extremes, huge extremes of excitement, of anger. At one point, I was arrested in Jerez de la Frontera. I'm driven out. Me and this guy, another guy, a guy who's a writer, one of the tourists, we were arrested for being vagrants. Driven out, kept them at the station overnight. Driven out to the mountains and left. This is what they did. They just left you out there, and we had to walk back. And we walked back. We walked back from that to the outback. I mean, they gave us these rolls, this food wrapped in this tin foil, these sandwiches. I mean, and we threw it out of that as they turned around to leave us there. We threw, or this other guy threw it at them. I thought, yeah, you know what? Fuck you. You're right. It's probably got poison in it anyway, Alex. It's got something in it. And it's a fuck you and you're out. Fuck you in your real world. Fuck you. So go back to Jenny Agata. We walked back from there. We walked back to where the vehicles are parked. And some guy, no, I don't know, one of my nemesis is another German fire eater, was there in the camp when we got back. This guy arrived that same day. He was there, sitting in there on the seat, and not in the bus, in someone else's caravan. I thought, fuck's sake. It's like, turn around, let's go back to the mountains. Fucking, this guy was always trouble. And so there's stories like this. There's another, just a little snippet of a story. But that was the outback. I think sometimes, what do I feel? When you say you spoke to me in Stoke Newington, and trying to explain it to people like yourself who, in a 30-second blast, then you think, I can't, and I'm not. Am I really back? You think, am I really back? You can take me out of the outback, but you can't take the outback out of me. You can't take what I've just got, what I've done, what I've seen and experienced. You can't take that out of me. Now I'm standing here in the street in Stoke Newington or Hackney.
Does it give you another layer of otherness? Because the otherness is already there in punk rock compared to the straight world. But then there's you talking to me, and you have a layer of otherness from me now. Does it make you feel more othered?
Yeah, I came back and I didn't feel I was back. You know what I mean? It's a bit like coming out from that mountain back in and seeing this German fire eater. It felt like that back in London, but it wasn't the London I left. It wasn't the London, and even when I left London, I didn't like much of it. And I got back, and what I did like seemed to be less, and what I didn't like seemed to be more. Not you, Joe, not you personally.
No, sure. I wasn't taking it. Not that fragile.
I get back, the first person I see is flowers in the dustbin, Gerard. He's complaining about my review of him in The Enemy.
Yeah, still bothering me.
I still get those texts, especially 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, well, they're the best ones. Yeah.
So there's that, and I think that when I came back, even as the otherness feeling, is I had to live in squats in Hackney when I came back. I couldn't move into Black Sheep, but someone's told me there's a squat in Hackney, and I managed to build Dalston area, very near Brown Road. I think I'd gone to Brown Road and tried to find someone to live there. So to come back, the thing people don't realise with that, like not the Jenny Agata things, there's nowhere to come back to. Like I said before, there's some story about coming back and going to the fire station because I had nowhere else to go to. This was similar, to come back. And again, my dream was just to be here to get a driving license, to work out how to do that, which I had no idea how to do.
Yeah.
I needed somewhere to stay to do that. And what happened after that, I found a place to stay. I spoke to you, but as I say, I had all that in me, all that circusy Spanish experience in me to try and overcome when I was trying to deal with normal people, real people, let alone anarcho punks who wouldn't really understand what was. And one of the other strange things, we'll finish on this one, is that I got back and found our chaos was huge. Punk circus was huge. The South Bank, they had a big show going on in the South Bank when I got back. It's like, what the fuck? At first I thought it was circus fuck off cough. I thought, my God, they've done it. Then I thought, no, it wasn't them. It was another French people. They're called Cirque Bidon when we were out there. Circus rubbish. And they didn't come into Spain. They didn't come to Spain. We heard of them. We knew of them. But they were more hippie. And they didn't come into Esparreguera. They stayed in France. This is also, I missed that. There's Circus Hazard were doing it. Circus Sun were like Tibetan break-offs at Esparreguera. They had the marquees. Circus Hazard were trying to go mainstream, try and do this. And they should have been our chaos. They we had that roots right in Stonehenge. Was our chaos didn't have those roots. But to get back and find everything you've been doing in Spain, people think, oh, you mean like our chaos? Oh, you mean like our chaos? Oh, what? No, but we did it. Oh, like our, it's incredible.
This is really something that throws up so many parallels, or at least in my mind it does, whether they're real or not. You will tell me, no doubt. So our chaos had basically taken something very real and visceral and almost feral, like you say, and they had they watered it down, or had they just been better organized, or had they put a slicky, a sort of gloss on top of it?
I think funding, because they could afford. They someone put money behind. Someone saw this. Someone knew what was happening, and put some money into it. And there's a bit like when I was saying about the music business, that when I was working for the enemy, I thought these bands are now becoming manufactured and fake bands were being brought in. Duran Duran, for example, or Spandau Ballet, being brought in to, and this was a bit like our chaos Spandau Ballet. Someone had created had seen this need, this thing, maybe all across Europe. This punk circusy feeling was going on. It wasn't just us. This was a feeling, and they were good. I can't knock it. They were very good at what they did. But it's a bit like saying, if you come back as an extreme example, I'd come back as the Sex Pistols on a tour and found that Plastic Bertrand was number one on the charts.
Right.
And you try to explain what you were, and they say, "Oh, you mean like Plastic Bertrand?" No, not like him.
Yeah,
We were
that's
more
the
than that.
analogy I was wondering about, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, really. Although nothing wrong with a bit of old plastic, I'd say.
Exactly. I like Plastic. I liked our chaos, but they were never the Sex Pistols or Ambulante Dilettanti.
No, sure. Well, on that note, I think that does sound like a good end moment. So we will be back, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say. But for now,
Yeah,
thank you ever so much, Tony Drayton. Another great interview. Thank you.
no problem.